All right. Good evening, everybody. It is 7 p.m. on December 14th, 2023, and I'd like to welcome everyone in the room and those participating online as I call to order this meeting of the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. We value everyone's input and have made sure to dedicate a portion of this meeting to hear from you. We look forward to your comments during that time, as indicated on our agenda. With that, Mr. Lyman, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Mrs. Dorn?
Here.
Mr. Kinsey?
Present.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Anderson?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. If you're able, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here in just a moment, we're going to be honoring Mr. Carpenter, as this is his last meeting with us. Please help yourself. We have some cake over there, so if anybody just wants to jump in and start cutting, please enjoy as we go here. Thank you, Mr. Hand. Yes. And we move right into the good news recognition right now that I have my agenda in front of me. Mr. Carpenter, if you could join me out front, please. Yeah. So, I was thinking about this, 8 years, huh? I thought when I threw my hat into the ring of trying for this thing, I thought I knew what I was getting into, and boy, did I realize pretty quickly how naive I was in that. Not till you sit in a seat like this, I'm sure you know. Does anybody really understand the challenges, the opportunities, the victories? So the things that can get brought to this table that we're being forced to react to can certainly make things interesting. I just, on behalf of our community, I want to thank you so much for your service. I know just personally what I see you bring to the table day in and day out at every meeting for the last 2 years. And I know what I will be taking away is not only the integrity that you show, but the calm and respectful demeanor that you bring that has truly been a model for all of us. And I know I will try to carry on in your honor. So thank you very much for your service, sir, and everything that you've done for your community. Thank you very much.
I also have a few words here.
Oh, okay.
As you sat down from the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Board of Education after 8 years of dedicated service, I'll take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for your remarkable contributions. Serving alongside you has been both an honor and a pleasure. Reflecting on your time as a board member, it's evident that your leadership has been instrumental in guiding our district through challenging times. You've served 2 terms from 2016 to 23, and during this time you served on the district safety committee for 3 years, OSBA student achievement liaison for 5 years, and OSBA Capital Conference delegate for 5 years. You also served as vice president in 2019 and president in 2020, 21, and 22. Especially appreciate the leadership you demonstrated during critical moments, such as navigating the complexities of district finances, addressing staffing and busing reductions, and steering us through an unprecedented challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm happy that we've been able to restore a lot of these reductions, especially in lowering our class sizes. Your steadfast dedication has been crucial in shaping the direction of our district and being part of one of the best school districts in Ohio year after year, and earning top grades this past year on our state report card, one of only 8 school districts in Ohio to have earned 5 stars overall and 5 stars in each category. And even at these heights, our district continues in an upward trajectory. But on a personal note, grateful for the opportunity you gave me to serve this district, and knowing that I also can call you a friend. Your qualities of being a good listener, collaborator, fair and honest have not only been made our working relationship effective, but also enjoyable, and has contributed positively to the board, schools, and the community. As you embark on your new endeavors, I want to extend my heartfelt best wishes. Passion and betterment of our community is evident, and I'm confident your future pursuits will be met with success and fulfillment. Although you're going to be greatly missed on the Board of Education here, I'm sure that our paths will cross in the future, and I know you're also serving on BSEF in that capacity, so appreciate your service continuing in that manner. So David, thank you again for unwavering dedication, leadership, and positive impact you've had on our district. And like Mr. Kinsey said, please, our deepest gratitude and thank you on behalf of school board, district, community for your years of service. Thank you.
It's really been quite a ride to serve these 8 years. Some of the challenging times that we went through, that the world went through at the same time, and how do we deal with some of those things. But one of my campaign goals that I said the last time I was running was that I wanted to grow thick skin, and that's been successful. So, at least on a personal note, that's been good. It's been a pleasure to serve with this board and others on the board previously. So, and I'm looking forward to whatever the next steps are. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next.
Everybody looks pretty sharp this evening.
No, totally coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe people didn't notice the audience. We're all wearing both ties.
We will now move into reports to the board. And first up, we would like to welcome Mr. Greg Sparks. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. And I am representing the Bellbrook Lions Club tonight on basically what I would describe as a public release of the at least nearly final design of Eagle Land 2, which is located between the St. Pierre Center and BCI. This morning I had the privilege of talking to the administration of BCI along with some teachers and a classroom of 3rd and 4th graders that originated this idea. What I'm going to show you tonight is associated with a need from you to the Lions Club in a memorandum of understanding, which Dr. Kozad and Ms. Sigmund have, associated with agreement that this project can go forward, and that in the period of this summer, the Lions Club would take possession of the ground where the playground that I'll show you is located. We will do some construction. We will use our own funds and donation funds to construct a playground. And at the end, hopefully in the late July, early August timeframe, return a constructed playground back over to the school for use by the children at both BCI and throughout the community. This project, I'm working the project management side. My name is Greg Sparks. I've got a little bit of experience in working projects in my lifetime. And Ernie Havens, who, if you don't know Ernie, is a Lions Club member, also city council member. We're co-chairs for the community improvement portion of this, and I will go through a little the history of how this came about. That history starts last February at a pancake breakfast the Lions Club had over in BCI. We had a little thing called a Shark Tank. We were trying to mimic a little Shark Tank-like environment of looking for community ideas. Just happens that 3rd grade class, Miss Jill Culler, put this together, and they blew us away. These 3rd graders came up with an idea about going to play and wanted to know if the Lions were ready to play. Their objective at that was to be inclusive play in this playground where a classmate of theirs or several classmates of theirs could actually get onto that equipment. A lot of it had to do with the fact of the rubber mulch and access points that were done and the playground equipment itself. They wanted that plus improvement of the playground overall. Let's heighten it a bit. And the point of community involvement and what could be actually done. As we go back, and this was turned over to the Lions Club for consideration in the improvement committee, we thought, oh, this is dearly loved here. This place called the Wooden Structure that was called Eagle Land. I'm going to tell you, we're not going to build a wood structure this time. What we're going to do is we're going to heighten what's already there. It was built at the point that Eagle Land was removed. The pieces were in there, but we're going to remove a few things and replace them with things that meet those objectives associated with that third grade class. We, the Lions Club, and I'm here tonight, are taking this on as a long-term project. We voted earlier this summer to do it and have placed $150,000 set aside from the Lions Club and seeking equivalent funds from the community. We've been on a fund drive since the festival occurred. We're sitting right about 30 with the potential to be at 90, hopefully by the year's end. We need to look at matching funds and a little higher than that at this point. This MOU, as we would describe, puts us responsible for the management. It is truly a public-private partnership. We are not using tax dollars for any of the construction. We will actually put it there and then turn it back to you for use. We are also responsible for the fundraising within the community, and we're trying to get the word out. This MOU is written between the two. I will sign it, and Dr. Kozad would sign it, and basically they have copies available to you to read if you need to do that. But tonight is to show you the design, which was the milestone I was asked to do. And if it'll take a few minutes, I will explain that. So this is the aerial eyes view. A couple things in the construction. We've had a team of several members of the community working to work on the design, specifically the topography. One thing that's great on this picture is that you have a gas line running right through the school district. It was recently constructed several years ago. This picture gives us that. We have to stay off of that for any construction. So most of the construction's got to occur over here on the left-hand side. We cannot venture to the right. It violates the ability for the rights of that gas line, and it cannot be done. We're planning to leave the two larger structures as is, removes the swing set and a few of these smaller items, and based on this item here that has some injuries connected to it will also be removed. The grass area will be expanded because the one key feature that we're going to include is the fact that the swing set seems to be very popular, but it's a bit aged. So we're going to bring a brand new swing set that also can be inclusive, at least 2 stations, so that somebody in a wheelchair can be put into that or have more of a closed ride to this. So at the time of construction, and I'll go through the schedule in a bit, we will be actually looking at it for a construction area with fencing within this area to be able to keep people away, to come in. It looks like about a 60-day period for actual installation of the equipment once we have it purchased, but the community over the summer can still play on the other sections. The intent is to fence it off so that it cannot enter in there. What I want to show you now is the basic overview of, overview of where things are going to be. We're bringing 4 pieces of equipment. One very mega piece, which I'll show you in a second, a wheel piece to the right side, and then this it's a zip line type of feature along with the new swing set in there. Our plan is that everywhere you see is outlined in a hard line will be a turf-like surface that you'll find locally in what's called a mud-free playground. We can't do the entire, the cost was prohibitive, like $500,000 to do all of it. But in this area, we think it's within a reasonable period that we can actually go here from this surface and go to this point and actually provide this surface. It looks like a turf with an underlayment. It is still cushiony, it is safe, and we've been working with the playground company out of Columbus working to this design. But this is the basic design. Now let me introduce you quickly to some videos of the type of things that we're going to add. And I'm going to shorten these a bit. If everything works, they're going to play. And hopefully
Good meteor shower! What? Good meteor shower! Baker, there's the meteor shower! What's up?
You just done zero? Yeah. All right, you want to get a 10. Hope you can go too.
it's called the merry-go-round. That allows wheelchairs access, and then anybody else that wants to
can enjoy
join
this
in.
product. So we've got seating, what we we've also got standing areas. We've got areas to park, for wheelchair users to be comfortable. It's a perfect example of what we call inclusive play.
I think it's a very.
I'm going to move on to the next one. There we go. This next one is more of a zip line structure, envisioning that for affordability we can do 2. If we get exceeding funds, we can go with 3. But this is the zip line type feature. And you notice the seat, and we're going to buy enough equipment that during the winter, if you want to take the nicer seat to keep it protected, it can come down at a certain point and put other items on there. But as you see, that's the point of the author. This is
What's the weight limit on that thing?
What was that?
What's the weight limit on that?
Don't have that data, but I can find that out for you. Okay, and the next one is what we're considering the mega piece. The larger it is, the most expensive. And kids went wild. This feature has 110 entry points for anything to climb on, move on. It's got so many things, 110. 6 of them are designed around to bring inclusive wheelchair and or disabled. Not all the area, they can't climb to the top, but they can at least get on and play as part of this bigger piece of equipment. And that gives you an idea of that. There we go. Now I want to give you the overview of the layout. Now remember, in the picture that I saw, we leave 2 of the overall structures there, and we put this in the center closer. The reason is for the joining asphalt and concrete and access points that we can then bring in to allow that to happen, keeping the square foot down. This is the actual, what you'll see is green, what is the actual area. This was built for us by the company. The shade you see in here is out of the design And this would be the window route. And the swing set, and the 2 accessible. So those were the 4 pieces of equipment that we're proposing to put in the design on the affordability that we've traded off some things. Features that I didn't talk about was the ability to get a placement for a 3rd one of those lines. The manufacturer of this, the biggest complaint you'll get on that item is the waiting line, because the kids will just flock to that and wait. This is an example of the Forever Turf Lawn. It's a drainage base and turf. An example can be found if you go to Forest Field. I actually took those following church the other day. If we can pick a color of green or blue or anything else in the associated surface, those selections had not been made. It's approximately, for what we're looking at in the current design, about 6,000 square feet, and the cost is about $22 a square foot. So that's, to be able to put this in on the surface, it's about equivalent of purchasing all the equipment. That's the put back of that. There is a 15-year warranty associated with this item. I'll give you a status of where we are in the overall cost, and this is as of now, but we see other things we can do with local providers. We haven't even gone off to ask the Ernst and the Thomas Mulch and all that relative to supplying materials to be able to offset some of these costs. Basic cost about $190,000 currently for the equipment. The Forever Turf, when you total the turf base and everything, is about $170,000. We are going to go with professional installers from Cincinnati, but they are going to help me work through a variety of community support ideas to include freight coming from Minnesota that may be cheaper, that we can handle that. The removal of the rubber at the current construction site. Our concept is going to be a community party about the time we start in May, and we've got bags already procured, and we're going to go ahead and take all that, we're going to get them out there with hands dirty and get it all picked up where the construction site, set it off to the side, get these great big bags, and hold that because we need it for where the swing set's going to go. We're going to pick up all those other things that are out there for surface and use that as the embankment, so it'll be community done there. We believe a local contractor can do this turf base and drainage project for much cheaper than the $38,000 we were quoted. These are official quotes from the contractor, but we're not stopping there. We're trying to work the cost as best we can. Plus, we can actually, they told us initially about a $9,000 reduction in cost for the volunteer labor coming to put the actual assembly of some of the swings and those kind of things together, which don't require a certified individual putting a massive. The we-go-round's got over 4 tons of concrete below it for stability and that type of thing. That is our basic estimate at this point in time. We are continuing through an effort of fundraising, sponsorship. We're still looking for that $100,000 donor to match us, and we'll go naming rights with the Lions name up there. We asked somebody asked about a $50,000 for naming rights in one of the items. We still don't have that donor, but we may be very close. And then we've been basically getting plaques that we're going to end up building through there. All of these are going to come through our foundation, which is a tax deduction for anybody that makes the donation. Our goal now, it started out at $300,000. We're working to $400K. If we go higher, we've got options such as that shade I showed and discussed to bring in. It was about a $12,000 item that just didn't make this budget cut that we did in the original design. But there's other things that we can work. The schedule that we're planning right now is, first off, this morning, I had that opportunity to meet with the BCI administration and the 4th graders relative to this design. Zach, you were there. They were ecstatic about it. Associated Dr. Kozad was there too. Tonight's meeting to sign the MOU, and then we're going to meet with the PTO concerning their interest in this on January 9th. Our also plan is that Gabrielle Enright and James Brown had already talked about targeting us for a January part of their newscast to be able to advertise this and also seek more sponsorship. Our plan right now is that by January 19th, with a 5-month lead time, would be the requirement for ordering. Based on the Lions Club and this current design, we have enough funds to be able to make that payment and pay off all the equipment. We'll then be working through that time to bring the other funds together. Our plan is to access at the minute of construction to be basically May 24th, get community groups out there. Reminisces my time of bringing community groups together when we did the stadium years ago. But we were going to go out and go do some of the work that we can do and then bring the professional crew in about the first week of June. They basically only need 2 weeks to do the foundational stuff, and then we can push for a July 28th, approximately 60-day completion, with our plan that commensurate with our this year's festival, which is the 23rd and 24th, we do some kind of grand opening. The goal is that the 3rd graders who had this idea in February, who are now 4th graders, get a chance to actually play on the playground that they envisioned. At this point, I offer for questions, but I want to start with a very intelligent question I received this morning from a 4th grader and a young girl who actually did that. She contemplated what I had just told them and said, I understand that I'm going to get play on it, but I want to know about future generations playing on this playground. And I said, well, best answer I can give you is hopefully 40 years from now, your kids will have a chance to play on this.
You're lucky.
So I offer any questions that you may have concerning this approach, the design, or any concerns that you may have.
Greg, going back to the drawing, that
Yes.
turf, when you go back to that drawing, is the turf the the outline right around the.
So let me show you.
Yeah,
Take a minute to.
yeah, that's all right.
There we
Right
go.
there. So
So
like on the
the-
far left, there's like the squares, the turf, just the squares, the turf, the big outline of the whole.
The big
thing.
outline is the turf.
Okay,
The dotted line is the distant safety zone that the equipment needs to be separated from other equipment.
okay,
There was a design feature that the company put in here, but they said to be able to make it safe, you have to have this much space so that like on the we-go-round, people that are grabbing a hold of it, going around, pulling it,
right.
have a safe area before you get to the next one. So the dotted are just those areas associated. This frame here, along with going up to the playground, was the area where you can push a wheelchair or have the turf-like product. This optimized a variety of things. I'm trying to keep the basic structure, but you lose a playground and about 3 pieces of equipment down here. And I got informed by a youngster that we need to repair that geo-grid thing because it's broken. Any other questions concerning this design? Okay.
It looks fantastic.
Well, thank you.
It looks fantastic.
And the community, Donnie Benson was involved in this, and several other people associated with PTO had been involved, but it's been a collaborative effort to try to get the design completed.
All right, thank you for your time, your effort, your expertise. You know, you have that expertise piece, but then also your volunteer hours for it. It's just an awesome combination, and giving back to the community. Appreciate the Lions Club taking this on.
Yeah, well,
Private-public partnership.
we're trying to the Lions Club is taking new, with the new membership that we've seen, the ability, the excitement. This is what, that type of project is what gets people excited. If you've been down to your school grounds for the festival, Mr. John Dorn, Lion John Dorn is with me. He and I were collaborating to get that building built and all the infrastructure that we've been able to get everything inside. So we're trying to really work that. That was our first long-term project, using the resources to be able to get that improved and making a better festival in the long run.
And just the Lion Club is extremely supportive of the school district, but I mean, this is like over the top support. This is great. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, our next report to the board, we would like to welcome our athletic director, Mr. Odell. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk about carpet also, turf also. And Greg alluded to 16 years ago, we built, our school district did, in partnership with Premier Health, totally revamped our stadium. David L. Holmes Field at Bellbrook Stadium, as it's currently called. It's been called Miami Valley South Stadium for a number of years during naming rights for that. We're actually currently looking for a new naming rights sponsor. For those listening at home also. But I want to talk about the carpet mainly. So the carpet, like the entire stadium, is 16 years old. We expect that, a stadium, especially a steel and concrete stadium, is going to last for a really, really long time. But the carpet typically gets about 10 to 12 years. And we've gotten 16. So that's really, really good news. It's been taken really good care of. Ron Tyree is our main maintenance person that works at the stadium, and he takes excellent care of it. It's the oldest turf in the entire state right now. And I'm not sure anyone's ever surpassed the 16-year mark in Ohio, but we're at it right now. That being said, there's really two things. So this next slide here basically just goes over the different groups all that use this field. I'm sure I left some out. Nearly every outdoor sport, even sports you wouldn't think actually sports you wouldn't actually think that are on the turf still end up using the turf and the track. Again, I'm sure I left off some, but I was trying to do the math the other day. I think it's definitely north of 300 games per year that are on this turf. The second part of this too that I want to talk about is the track. So the track is also in deteriorating shape, and it's best from an efficiency standpoint to replace both those at the same time. Replacement. Okay, so on the carpet, guys, there's two main things that necessitate the replacement of turf. So there's a variety of different types of sports turf, but it's all essentially carpet that's made in Dalton, Georgia. No different than the carpet I'm sitting on right now. It's just a little bit different weave. It's a little bit different pile. But there's two things for sports turf that wear it out. The first thing, the most important one, is the GMAX testing. I'll talk about that in a second. And the second one is the seams. So every line in a turf field is sewn in. So you obviously in carpet here, we don't have lines that are marked. A lot of people might think they're painted on, but they're actually sewn in. So paint will fade. This is actually a different colored carpet that's sewn in. So you have seam separation is a problem with once you get past the 10-year mark. And the most important one is the GMAX testing. So GMAX is an industry standard for absorption of force in sports turf. This is a 20 pound missile, they call it, weight that's dropped from the top of this thing, and it calculates the amount of force the turf will absorb. We get this tested every single summer. The Moats group, who we bought the turf from originally, we've had a maintenance package with them and a testing package. They come out and test it every single summer. Here, could you slide down to the next one here? Another picture of the seams here. And then this area, this is the north side. You can see the band bleachers here. And actually, Greg would know those band bleachers very well. That was the major help the Lions Club did on the stadium 16 years ago, was they totally disassembled that huge set of bleachers and re-erected it there in the north end zone and for our marching band at the football games. But this north side, especially, as you might imagine, if you guys have ever been out at an event, nearly every group enters from the north, and that is the vast majority of where. This is where we're starting to see our GMAX numbers slip down to near unsafe values. So essentially, they're going in and they give you a contact map when they're done with the testing, and they show you where your scores are at on each part of the turf. But this is always our highest number and our closest to reach the industry safety standards. All right, next slide there, please, Henry. Our track. Okay, so our track, unfortunately, we don't get 16 years out of the track. Well, we've got 16 years total out of this track. Tracks require a lot more maintenance to keep them up. This is the home side of the track. You can see we've had to do a lot of patching over the years, and we've had to reline the track at least twice, I believe, over the last 16 years. But there's several spots you can see where there's high use and the cleats start to tear it up, and where we've had to patch. The track is not in great shape either. We actually we've hosted the league meet the last couple of years, and we also host the Division I OHSA district track meet. So it's a pretty big track meet that we host every May. So besides just for our own kids and the necessity of having a high-level track, a quality track, that's also a big part of it too. Next slide there, Henry. Okay, so the next part, guys, is our vendor. So there's really, I think if you went online and Googled turf installation, you might find a dozen different vendors that would say they service Ohio. When it comes down to it, there's really only a couple. And by far the most, the highest customer reviewed one is the one we currently have, the one that installed 16 years ago, the Moats company. The Moats Group, excuse me. The Moats Group is about 45 years old. They're based out of Cincinnati, and they are nationally renowned in both artificial sports turf installation and natural turf sports installation. So they're doing a number of NFL stadiums and grass also, but their wheelhouse is both artificial turf and running track installation. Next slide, please. We're in a really good company with the Moats Group. You can see this is just the high schools that really are in the Dayton area, just ones that we'd all be familiar with. But if we went state, their wheelhouse is southwest Ohio, but the Moats Group, their footprint is over the entire state. You can see we're also in really good company as far as Division I colleges and professional sports here. Our 16 years ago, we were really early. We were ahead of the curve as far as turf installation. 16 years ago, there wasn't a lot of other schools that had artificial turf. very quickly, a lot of schools caught up and on us. So none of those other schools have gotten 16 years out of their turf. So almost all of those schools, they went with most the first time, they've gone with most the second time. Some of those schools actually have 2 fields at a time. And so they, in theory, have been now 3 and 4 time customers in the last dozen years or so. How are we going to pay for this? So over the last 16 years, we budgeted for this item as a school district. The total cost for the turf is just over $500,000, and it's about $200,000 for the track. So a total of about $750,000, about $750,000 in totality here for product and installation. Excuse me, removal for the turf, installation of the new turf, and then laying down a new track surface over top of our current one. How do we know we're getting a good deal here? It's an awful lot of money, so that's got to be everybody's first question here. We have different purchasing cooperatives, which I'm sure you guys have been familiar with, different purchases approved over the years. There is both a National Association of Educational Purchasing Agencies and then the Ohio Purchasing Council, of which we're more precisely a member of a regional one in Southwest Ohio. The Modes Group is a member of both of these, all 3 if you want to count our regional one in Southwest Ohio, to ensure that there's ceilings there's maxes for each one of these products. So all the major expenditures and products, there's ceilings set by these purchasing cooperatives, and Modes has to stay within these to remain part of the purchasing cooperative. Let's go to our final slide here, please, is our concept here. So the track will look almost identical to what it is now. It'll simply look a new surface. It'll be a richer color of black, and it'll also be have new brighter lines. The turf, though, and talking to our different stakeholders in our school district and our athletic department, and what they'd like to see, we've got 2 tones. So we've got, you can see the different 5-yard strips. We've got lettering in our end zones. We're now going to have lacrosse lines permanently sewn into this field. Right now, the coaches and I will typically paint those lines on by hand on the turf, and they'll fade over the year. It'll last much longer than if you're doing grass, but they'll still fade. We'll have to redo them. But those will be permanently there. So what you're seeing here is football, soccer, women's lacrosse, men's lacrosse, and actually just those right there. And then of course our track. And finally, any questions that you guys might have? Everybody at once.
Is it common at all to use real turf? Do any other schools have that around yet?
They do, but it's been, so is a real turf field, maybe the question you might be asking, and a lot of people do, especially listening to professional sports, is a natural grass field better than a turf field? Is it safer? Maybe. The thing is with natural, in scholastic sports, no public school in America has the budget to maintain a grass field at a high enough level to keep it safe. If we were to go to grass, or anybody were to grass, even with an unlimited budget, you still need to severely limit your amount of activities you could have on that turf. Which is also why you see NFL stadiums, for example, still have turf. Whether we watch an Army-Navy game on Saturday, the Patriots, they still have turf so they can play professional soccer in there, so they can host all these other events. Turf is actually much safer because it's consistent. There is maintenance involved with it, but the maintenance to keep it safe is far, far less of what we see.
That was my first thought. I just imagine a real turf, the maintenance of that has to be incredible. And I know when I learned the amazing work that our very small maintenance group does everywhere, it's amazing.
The grass, just keep up with I think your point, keep up with the grass is an incredible challenge. But yes, to be able to host, again, it was probably a conservative estimate of 300 games. That was just actual sports games I was counting on here. That's not even counting all the different music events and all the other groups that use the field for non-sports activities.
High heels on graduation now?
Yes, that was one we probably had not envisioned before, was having graduation out here, but that did involve us to have a mud-free graduation, as we're not going to have at the playground.
About how long does it take to go through the whole process of getting it replaced?
Great question. So ideally, we are under contract here in the month of December, And that would then allow us to reserve our spot with the company that we get it done during the most popular time, which you can imagine is really the month of June. The month of June is when we want to, the goal would be to have this entire project started and finished in the month of June, so that July 5th, everybody comes back from vacation and all of our fall sports are able to hit the ground running on July 5th. But yeah, the goal would be to have all of it done. And we start, if not the day after graduation, really probably the day, more realistically, the day after the last lacrosse game or the last track meet. And then we're done in the month of June.
Your one slide talked about money budgeted. Do I understand that to mean this is money that we have saved up since over time, so we have been putting money away for this? Or is
In our
this?
permanent improvement fund is what we pay for. So we have the money in the permanent improvement fund over. I don't know if we have the money there the first year, but by the second year, we'll be able to use the permanent improvement collections and pay for it. So it'll be paid by PI and general fund a little bit the first year, and then the PI will replace the general fund money in the second year. So nothing will be spent out of general fund in the long run for that renovation. And PI is a 2 mil levy that was passed before I came here, so 27 years ago.
All right, well, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Charlie.
very much. All right, I believe that is all of our reports to the board for tonight. Up next is correspondence. If there's anything board members would like to share. Not hearing anything, we'll move into open communication. So your thoughts and comments are very welcome during this time. When given the floor, please share your name, address, and any group affiliation. Any group affiliation that you hold if it's relevant. You'll then have 5 minutes for your comments, which should be directed toward the presiding officer, who tonight happens to be me. This is time for the board to listen and absorb. As such, traditionally, a dialogue is not created in this moment. In case you're wondering, the reason for these policies, which can be read in their entirety on the district's website, and policy number 169.91, is to ensure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to speak and that everyone is treated equally and fairly. So we would like to welcome Mike Brugman. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello, so I'm Mike Brugman, proud citizen of Bellbrook as always. Wanted to touch on a few things here. I saw on the agenda, as I usually do, I read lots and lots of news, but I saw on the agenda that you're having an executive session, I think, at the end of the day for, at the end of the meeting for, to look at our defense posture with the, the arming and the guns, but just wanted to point out, it's probably too late to affect that meeting, but ProPublica, they are an investigative organization. They put out a really great study on the Uvalde shootings that occurred. I guess that was earlier this year. Is that earlier this year still? Yeah. I didn't have that right. Yeah. So it goes into a lot of lessons about how the communication between the school police, and the local police, the types of training that each had, and where the weaknesses were. So I thought it was a great story. It's a long form story. It'll take you 20 or 30 minutes to read it, but I thought there were a lot of great lessons in there. So I know it's probably too late to maybe impact your conversation this evening, but I might suggest you look at that. I'm not a fan of arming teachers, and I especially didn't like the way it was, that policy was installed here, but nevertheless, I thought that was a really good idea. Second, I only have 3 topics. Second topic was, I saw 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago in the Dayton Daily News, an article that says new Bellbrook school board members take aim at culture war topics and school funding. So I just want to say that, I've been up here before saying, yes, I think I see them with probably most parents that we care most about our students' education, about the things that they're learning here, rather than the cultural war issues. And I know the cultural war issues kind of all gets involved together here, but there was a quote in there: they raised concerns that cultural issues would distract from the business of educating students. So I just continue to encourage that we don't allow that to occur, that we continue to focus a lot of these very neat initiatives up here that we see. I'm always looking forward to seeing the learning activities that my kids bring home every day. We have great conversations. One comment Mr. Price said, it's easy to criticize the board, but we don't pick it up. It gets brought in, it gets dumped on our table, and we have to respond. So I think that's fair, but I think it is possible to criticize the board in some cases where the life isn't what happens to you; it's how you respond. We've heard some similar sayings to that. So when I've said it here twice now, but when my friend calls me from Seattle and says, "Are you that school district that has now encouraged or authorized discrimination against LGBT students and teachers?" I think that's probably. I think maybe it's a criticism is fair that maybe we've gone a bit too far there. And then third thing, illnesses. Well, you may see I'm wearing a mask. I don't think I've collapsed from carbon dioxide poisoning, as some people may have stated throughout the school board elections. But I do have a medical procedure tomorrow morning. Nevertheless, I think we all know a lot of folks that have been sick here recently. When I walked in the front door, I saw two girls talking, both coughing. Another boy on the way down the hall was coughing. I've heard a few people in here coughing. Anyway, we do know there's a lot of stuff going around. Fairborn High School had to shut down, as most of us know, last week. But I just encourage, there was great communication earlier this week with the security threat, and that was communicated out proactively. That was much appreciated. I may just encourage, as we come back to school over the holidays and you send out your district-wide notifications that say, welcome back, remember, come back to school, it's time. But you may also say, hey, kids stay home if you're sick. I'm not sure, my kids have said that more than a third of their teachers have been out with COVID. That's what they stated, I've had a substitute for a week. I don't know that that's being accurately communicated out to the district. And again, that's a 10 and a 12-year-old stating that, so I think it with a little bit of grain of salt. But nevertheless, I know it's not culturally. I was at the pediatrician's office yesterday with my son, had an annual physical, and you walk in, it says mask highly encouraged but optional. Walk into the waiting room, there's all the sick kids coughing. Some of the parents are coughing. Most of the kids are sick or sneezing. Not a single person had a mask on. I understand that's a battle we've lost as a culture. I understand that, but nevertheless, I've mentioned up here before, but air filtration and all the other kind of passive measures that we can potentially take to increase our student safety. So I hear that. Thanks. So I just hope that we have. I know there's a lot of contagious allergies going around right now, but I didn't know they were contagious until this year. But more than the school safety and the shootings, I worry more about my student or my boys' health long term. So that's it. I do want to publicly thank the Lions Club. My son won a bike at the festival 6 or 8 years ago, and that's been passed on to the boys. We just donated it to a great charity downtown Dayton last month, as my youngest boy outgrew it. But thanks to the Lions Club and thanks to everybody. Thanks to Mr. Carpenter again for all the years of service. I know it's been quite a ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. We appreciate you being here. And I hope, sir, Joe, might just one small respectful clarification. Just want to hear arming teachers. Just to make clear, we're not arming teachers. No teachers will be carrying any firearms. We're having highly vetted and highly trained volunteers who will be able to access very secure tools. So hope you don't mind. I just
appreciate the clarification. And I thought that again, very long form story is quite beneficial. It opened my eyes in some ways.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir. All right, that now closes our open communication period, which now we move into the treasurer's report. Mr. Warren.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting held November 9th?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Dorn, seconded by Mrs. Anderson. Any questions or corrections to the minutes? Please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I get a motion to approve the treasurer's report for the month of November as presented with the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Dorn.
Really don't have anything to report on the treasurer's report. I want to spend my time on these next three. So if you have any questions about anything that was in the agenda, I'll be happy to answer them.
On the revenue pie chart, there was, says our real estate taxes provide 67% of our budget. Is that typical? Or is that a little bit skewed here because of ESSER funds?
It's a little bit skewed because we receive our property taxes twice a year, and the second big shot was September, about September when we got our second part. So basically, we get none in October, November, till March. So the next couple of months, that percentage will be going down, but it's still about I would say 60% or something like that, 55 maybe.
From the chart, if I add state foundation and state federal systems together, that adds up 16 and 9% respectively, so it's about 25% of our funding comes from the state, federal. So then the other, what's this tuition and investment earnings? What is that? That's 5% of our.
That would be, tuition includes the fees that are paid for all-day, everyday kindergarten, and for preschool students, typical preschool students, and then out of district, if we have any students that I don't know if we do this year or not, but actually pay tuition. Those tuitions, like, figure about the state is over $10,000 to come here to the school district. But and then on the investment earnings, it's in there with interest rates up. Okay, that's really shot that number.
But overall, we get roughly 25% of our funding from state and federal sources. The rest of it is pretty much coming from local or investments of local income.
Yes, and I don't know if this is an updated statement, but I was told at one time that the average district in the state is more like 50-50 on state funding and local funding. Of course, we're like 25 state, 75 approximately, local, because of factors that the state funding uses to lower our funding. We talk about it.
And somewhat related to that, as far as talking about our revenue sources and things like that, we have a advisory committee, correct? Financial advisory committee that meets twice a year. Is that?
Yes, we're in the process of forming that. We've done it with COVID. I think it kind of took a back seat, but we're getting back to forming that this year. And so currently forming.
I'd like either, it doesn't have to happen tonight, but certainly as we get into the new year, especially as we get the new board member seated, we'd really like for thought to be given to not just a committee that meets twice a year, but literally a working group that would involve all components of our community. Working people, retirees, business owners, whatnot, because we have a emergency levy that's timing out in 2028, right? Right. And so it's not that far off to where if, the board's going to recommend something, that's going to have to happen. So we don't want to wait until, what would it be, 4 years from now to start thinking about it. So we're probably a couple years out where we maybe perhaps need to consider taking action or not. And what I, as a board member, really want to see is that all options other than just falling back on the same old story of passing the property tax levy here, I want all those to be investigated. And we need to get busy. We don't need to wait till the last minute and have a crisis. I never want to see again in the district what happened in 2019 and 2020. And unfortunately, that is, it's pretty far down the railroad track, but it's coming. And so I don't think meeting twice a year for half an hour, 45 minutes is going to help us formulate a plan to address that. And maybe there is no solution beyond constant, falling back on property tax levies. However, I would hope we can find another option, but it's going to start with an effort to do so. So anyhow, once we get into January, New Year, I would really like to zero in on not just a committee that meets twice a year, but again, as I said, a working group that meets regularly that benefits from inputs from all elements and aspects of our community here. So we can look for an alternative to our model that frankly has been forced upon us by a state, as I will continue to say, and I think David always agrees with me, it's essentially in so many ways adversarial to K-12 education. And so we have to plow our own way, and I would just like to find a way to do that aside from recurring property taxes, tax levies. So, for further discussion after the first meeting.
If you would like to, we have a, if the board approves the calendar later on this meeting, we do have a January retreat. That could be an item that we could add to that agenda as a discussion item during that meeting.
That's the later meeting in the month.
It's the January 27th meeting, yeah, so we could add it to that agenda item and have, more of a discussion at that point. That would be okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Did we take a vote on that?
No, we did not.
Okay,
We
I have a
motion.
motion by Mrs. Dorn. I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson motion, correct? Mrs. Dorn seconded. Please call the roll on approval of the treasurer's report.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve the tax rates as presented by the Budget Commission, Greene County, for 24-25?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Carpenter and then Mrs. Anderson.
Here's the good news. The Greene County Budget Commission has lowered our bond retirement millage from 4.2 mils necessary to yield the amount to pay the principal and interest on our bond issue from 2003, from 4.2 mils to 3.4 mils. That's a reduction of 0.8 mils. And on our emergency levy from 4.66 to 3.67, which is 0.99 mils. So the total is 1.79 mils that our property tax will be lowered due to about three things, but one being the increase in property values, two being the increase in residencies in the district, and three being, well, it's like a loan. As you pay down the loan, principal on the loan, you have less interest to pay. And so less millage is required to yield the amount to pay the principal and interest. Yes, less millage is required to come up with the amount that we passed for the emergency levy. So taxpayers, the amount levied to taxpayers will go down 1.79 mils for calendar year 2024. And just a little side note, that I think it was more luck than wisdom probably, but right now we are in the best possible situation with interest rates. The money we have borrowed in the bond issue and the lease purchases from years ago is fixed, the interest rate. As interest rates are high, we're paying a lot lower amount. On the other hand, the money that we are, what we call intermediate funds that we're able to invest is at variable rates, and we're getting the high rate that is available on there. So we're doing pretty well with those two. But the good news is the millage is going to fall 1.8 mils if you approve these rates, and they were sent to me by the county auditor. So.
I think I've asked this before, and I know this is something we have to approve these rates. I don't fully understand what would happen if we didn't. I don't think anybody understands that.
If there are
Like,
several,
is there any option?
Well, there are several resolutions like that we have to pass. I mean, what happens if you vote no on the accepting the financial report? Now, I don't know why, but they send me a hard copy resolution, the county auditor does. And these are the tax rates we're approving. We want the names of the board members present, how they voted and everything, and send that back to us before it can be put in place. So I don't know what happens if we vote no. I guess we have some kind of meeting to try to iron out what's going on. I don't know.
Go ahead, Audrey, let's just see what happens.
It's just always seemed weird to me. Go ahead and call all
Not all of us have to vote yes, just 3 of us do.
That's all right.
I've never seen it drop that much in my life, but.
I know, that's great. That's
It's usually
much
10th
more.
of a bill or something.
All right, any more questions? Please call the roll on the tax rates.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
We're gonna do it.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the natural gas supplier through the Southwestern Ohio Educational Purchasing Council bid process for this is effective July 2025, but I'll explain it once we get it.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Carpenter and then Mrs. Dorn.
Okay, we buy our natural gas, we bid it, and we buy it through a purchasing cooperative, approximately 100 other school districts. We were able to secure a bid, a 5-year bid, I don't remember when it was, 2020 or something like that. And you always have to lock it in order to, it's like a level pay on things. You lock it in a little bit higher than what the rate is at that point. You can keep it there for 5 years. Makes budgeting easier. It takes care of you when you have spikes in natural gas costs. And natural gas prices went sky high. We're locked in at the lower rate for 5 years. However, what we have to do now, I guess, is go with them again, the EPC again, July 2025. They're not going to lock it in at the same rates. We're going to have a large, unless something happens where natural gas prices go way down, we're going to have a substantial increase in our natural gas costs to lock in again. So it's a little bit of a shell game if you decide not to lock it in. Katrina hits and wipes out a bunch of stuff and it spikes. So we have, for the last 15 years at least, gone with the Southwestern Ohio EPC on natural gas purchase. So that's what we're recommending to continue to do.
Are we required to go with 5 years? Can we lock in at a lesser amount if we think that the current inflated prices potentially short-lived?
That's the only bid that they do, the Southwestern Ohio EPC, is 5 years. And I think it's because the shorter the period, I don't know why it is, they only do 5 years.
All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes.
Then can I get a motion to approve the upgrades to the high school track and field as presented by Mr. Abdel? That also is through the Southwestern Ohio EPC, and it's a bid price. It would be through the Moats Group, the company Charlie mentioned in his presentation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Carpenter, seconded by Mrs. Anderson.
Maybe I don't understand the wording of this motion. So it's requesting to competitively bid for the turf with a specific company.
It's already been competitively bid.
It's already been competitive.
Right, and so we're
Okay.
going with the competitive
To
bid.
utilize the competitively bid. Got it.
One of the most-
I'm reading. Got it. Thank you.
Because part of being, the consortium or whatever, that is part of the competitive bid process. It's something else.
They bid it for everybody rather than individual school districts having to go bid with all these vendors. They do the bidding process.
Got it, I understand now. I just misread the motion.
Same concept as natural gas, and everything else. They're out there.
Right, and then it's big time cooperative purchased. So you have 100 school districts doing it, getting a better price than you do on your own, out there by yourself. So that's why we go with them.
I didn't get a chance to say it before, but kudos to everybody who got 16 years out of an average of 10-year materials. Thank you for that. Maybe we can do 17.
Pressure's on.
Sounds like a challenge.
It's that yearly maintenance and ongoing maintenance that really, it's easy to forget, but then it catches up to you at the end. Just like you take care of your car, you don't take care of your car, it catches up to you. Payment now, payment later.
Mr. Lyman, please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Okay, anything else, sir?
One more, can I get a motion to participate in the advertisement and receive bids for the purchase of 4 72-passenger school buses, and also through the EPC.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Carpenter and then Mrs. Anderson.
Well, it's that time of the year where, you're trying to schedule stuff for the summer, and then, with these buses, someone backed out of, I don't know who it was, they backed out of buying 30 buses, they lost their deposit. So they're gonna turn around as 18 to 24 months if we don't, utilize these buses. These buses are the stock buses. They're coming with, the last 4 buses 3 or 4 that we got, have all the cameras and everything on them. This is the same thing that's gonna be with these 4 also. They'll have all the cameras, stop work cameras and everything else. So that was the plan. All the any newly purchased bus, we're gonna put all those cameras.
So in this scenario, we're getting a better price for the 4 buses by going ahead with them now. And also a more appropriate time frame. Because right now, according to what we were told a few months ago, or maybe more recently than that, we've got 16 buses that we really ought not to be, or some number of buses that we ought really not to have on the, 16 years old. And we need to really take advantage of this opportunity.
And the prices are increasing next January, 15
to $20,000 per bus. And then the other side of it too is as we replace those old buses, in theory, the new buses should have a lot less repair work and things done. It'll save us money in that way too.
And what do we do with the old buses? Do we just get rid of them?
They're sub buses, or we do sell them.
Okay. So you do make money.
Boy Scout groups, very small amount of money.
Right.
Boy Scout groups or other church groups, or
Go to public
people
auction.
turn it, go to Bengals games or Browns games, they have the whole camper kind of thing.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, Mr. Lyman, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
And I don't know if people noticed that we were a little out of order here. Usually the treasurer's report is at the beginning, and then we do public comment. But we wanted to make sure that there was a time in there for the reports to be done, and then time for public comments, and then time for the board to then either approve or not approve those resolutions. So there was a rhyme or reason why we kind of shifted things around to make sure that there's a public comment piece, that people did have the opportunity to comment on those reports before the board voted on them, or didn't vote on them. I guess they vote on them, but whichever way they vote. Going on to superintendent's report. We can do a consent agenda on 7A and B, so certificated license, employment, resignation, leave of absence, supplemental duty. So resignations for a few coaches there, some supplemental duty people activity contracts, for the softball, swim, and lacrosse, and then also some volunteers trying to get ahead for some of our spring sports. And then also support staff employment resignation leave of absence. We have a few resignations there, special needs assistant, lunchroom monitor, custodian, modifying, moving somebody, Logan, from a van driver to a bus driver, and then a few employment contracts for bus driver and unassigned route bus driver, and then adding to that consent agenda 8C. Sorry, I didn't see that at the bottom there. Approving substitutes, even though first semester there's only, 5 days left in the first semester, approving those folks for the first semester, and then approving the list for the second semester.
I think that's everything under 7.
Yep, 7A, B, and C.
Still getting used to the new format.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept as consent agenda 7A, B, C?
So moved.
Second. Mrs. Dorn, and then Mr. Carpenter.
Just one comment. I know I went through a few of those, but the bus driver position. So we are now, December 14th. At this moment, fully staffed, and our transportation department has taken us this long to get fully staffed. And then we also have an unassigned route bus driver who is kind of, as of this second, unassigned route bus driver who has a contract, but almost kind of somebody, I won't say waiting in the wings, but again, there's a 2 to 3 or 4 month period where they haven't been a bus driver before, where they would we would hire them and then they would get trained and so forth. It's not a real quick turnaround time. So to have somebody there that's an everyday sub, and then can also, if there's something quits or something, leave of absence or anything, they are ready to jump in also. So we are wanting to do at least one more of those to try to kind of build this reservoir of bus drivers rather than trying to always scramble, since it is kind of some barriers to entry in those jobs because of the skill set they have and licensure, the training and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out. But the transportation department getting cobbled stuff together to try to get through this first semester, so kudos again to that.
As far as discussion, I will need to abstain from C because my wife is in the list there.
Do you want to do
Yeah, do you want to pull that out and vote on the other ones, or do you just want to abstain on the whole thing?
For simplicity's sake, I can just abstain.
Okay. All right. Other comments? Please call the roll on tonight's consent agenda.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Abstain.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
and Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Yeah. So other action items, memorandum of understanding with the Bellbrook Lions Club. Recommend approval of memorandum of understanding between the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local Board of Education and Bellbrook Lions Club regarding renovation and construction to Eagle Land Playground.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Carpenter, and then Mrs. Anderson. Just when you think the Lions Club can't get any more generous, keep on going. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
And to echo that, thank you to the Bellbrook Lions Club for all their support of the school district and working their project management skills and their volunteer hours and so forth. So really appreciate that. Really, it puts us, as I was there today with those kids, and put a smile on my face. Just they were really excited, especially the timeline of this will be ready by the beginning of school years, the beginning of next school year. So they were super excited. Good stuff. Student transportation release, recommend approval to release students to Centerville City Schools for the purpose of transportation for the remainder of the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Carpenter and then Mrs. Anderson. Questions?
Can you explain that a little bit, what that exactly means?
Yeah, just certain school districts work with others if there's a certain situation that, from where a student is particularly going, I don't know the specific details on this, but we work cooperatively with the other school districts, that if we can partner up with them for them to provide transportation, maybe it's to the ESC, maybe it's to a school that's in Columbus, or those certain things. So working cooperatively, that it's not an extra route, that person just kind of, jumps on a bus, but, and gets added to another bus route, or van route.
In this case, Centerville Schools is providing the transportation.
Right.
For one of our students,
Right.
to Incarnation, not to
Okay.
Centerville.
Right.
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes.
Athletic overnight, high school boys basketball, recommend approval of high school boys basketball overnight trip to Hockey Hill State Park for varsity coaches and players, December 27th through the 30th. Fees covered by the boys basketball.
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Dorn and Mrs. Anderson. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Indoor track participation, recommend approval of the 2024 high school indoor track and field participation activities.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Carpenter, Mrs. Anderson. Please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Out-of-state travel, baseball. Recommend approval of out-of-state travel for high school baseball team to Fort Walton, Florida, March 24th to the 29th. That's during spring break for spring training, game events, no cost to the district.
So moved?
Second.
Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Dorn.
And this is a yearly trip.
Good way to spend spring break.
Yeah.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
2024 meeting calendar. So recommend approval of the 2024 meeting calendar, the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek local Board of Education.
Do we have a motion to accept the calendar?
So moved?
Second.
Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Dorn. Doesn't matter, I know there's one on there I can't make, but hopefully that's the only one. Jean. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
I'll abstain.
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
G, legal counsel. Recommend approval of the firm of Sabashi, Bodemuth and Justice to continue as board school district legal counsel effective January 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Dorn and Mr. Price. Please call the roll.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey.
Yes. Okay, that's it. Items for discussion and information. Just a little chance for a roundtable here. I think we all attended the OSBA Capital Conference in Columbus a month ago, whatever it was. If anybody just wants to share your thoughts or just maybe a brief second of some key takeaways or something you liked.
I provided the document that's attached to the agenda. It's the legislative platform. OSBA essentially is also a lobbying organization for school districts in the state for its members. I think practically every school district is a member, if not every. Yeah. So every year they go through and a legislative committee reviews the platform, looks at anything that needs to be added or adjusted or whatever. And then as a delegate, you have a time for, at the conference for the changes to be presented and voted on and so forth. So there were 2 items that were adjustments. They passed overwhelmingly. And the copy that I provided was just a full list of all of the legislative platform components that OSBA lobbies for our legislators. So I wanted to just be able to provide that for people to have as a reference. So if you have a question, you can at least search the document and see if there's something in the platform that fits whatever question you have. So that's why I wanted to provide that. So that's me.
Thank you.
I thought that was very helpful, and there was a section there that talked about my favorite subject, school funding, and how they zeroed in on the fact that, the school systems throughout Ohio are basically, by design of the state, prohibited from having inflationary growth as property values increase. And school income essentially does not increase except for the construction. And so they described it quite well in that summary. It's good to know that an entity with as high profile as they have, continuing to hammer home that we do not have an efficient and effective way of funding schools, public schools in the state of Ohio. So I appreciate the fact that they, again, did a nice job. I read it with Brett Hayden, but they did a good job, in fact, really good job explaining that problem that exists and will continue to exist. I think it's perpetuity, it seems, But, so thank you.
One of the sessions I attended was on recruiting, and actually they focused on recruiting of bus drivers, which again, around the state, around the nation, is something very challenging. And just like everybody else, we've had our challenges with trying to be fully staffed. But they essentially did videos and posted on a website, social media. They interviewed bus drivers. Why do you want to, why did you want to be a bus driver? Why were you interested in this? And just tried to present a personal approach, personal touch to the videos or to that concept, and really worked hard to getting that messaging out to social media, some geo-fencing in social media, where essentially you're targeting, your area of where you want those ads or that advertisement to go. And so they just did a very nice job of doing that, and also had stuff, traditional newspapers, traditional media, print media. So just a combination of trying to do the personal touch, a personal connection with trying to find additional bus drivers. But again, you could do this for any of our positions, as we're finding harder and harder to fill our positions that, maybe looking at taking on some of those things and using bits and pieces of it as we try to advertise ourselves as a destination place to work. So this is good ideas.
I went to 6, 7, 8 different workshops. They were all very educational, lots of good information. Some of which you'd be like, I might agree with that. Some of it maybe might not so much, but it's always very thought-provoking. One of the first ones I went to talked about board and superintendent and treasurer relationship building and working together. Something that I heard them recommend through there was a board handbook. And I actually had the privilege of sitting in Dr. Pryor's kind of onboarding that Dr. Kozak led. And I know you brought a document that you worked on. I thought it was fantastic. And I know you mentioned you might at some point share with the rest of the board. And I think that it's kind of right what they were talking about. And so kudos to you for that. I thought it made the whole process really good. Second one is a big one. I think one of the largest rooms they had, it was standing room only, all about school safety. It was put on by a school, St. Mary's, just north of us a ways. Their superintendent, their chief of police, and some of their folks were there. Really, they covered everything. Mental health, physical security, all the way up to best practices for something like an armed shooter response team. And my big takeaway from that is just we're on the right track. Everything there that they mentioned, I was like, okay, we've given consideration to that. I thought that was reassuring. That was good to hear. I know many of our folks were in that one. Couple that were separate sessions, but I thought that they were linked. And honestly, they were my favorites. One was kind of on just generally on leadership, and the other one kind of a catchy title, so it dragged me in. Forensics of Tough Decisions. And I'm linking them because they were kind of the same thing. People say, oh, the world has changed in the last few years. Put a number on it, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Yeah, that's true. Well, schools and school boards have probably changed a lot in the last 3 years and 5 years, and just the things that are being brought to school boards and things that school boards didn't have to deal with 5, 10 years ago. And really the emphasis, or at least the key takeaway I took from that, was their discussions about being proactive versus being reactive. And I thought that was a really good conversation. I got more. I got a whole notebook full of notes. If anybody's curious, you want to learn more, feel free to grab me afterwards. We can talk.
I went to a number of different really interesting sessions. I think the one that's probably most appropriate here was one about wildfires of misinformation and how to combat those. And I'll share some of my notes with Mr. Conti in that. But I think this one particular school district I was presenting, they did a thing that I think might be helpful. We're always trying to improve our communication and communication with the community, especially around things like finances. So this particular district did what they called miscellaneous Mondays, and they used that as an opportunity. It's something on their social media and on their website. They use that to highlight groups that don't often get highlighted. So they're not, the kids who are scoring super high in the test, and they're not the athletes that, went to state. It's the smaller kind of unsung heroes that are around and about and use that forum every Monday. But what's happening Wednesday, that's more something that's happening currently this week. And Finance Fridays. And their treasurer actually did put out, it was just kind of a factoid. Did you know that this is how Ohio finances our schools in this way? Did you know that we spend this X percent of our budget on whatever, lawn mowing? Like just different factoids, and it was a constant thing, so that they did say when it came to levy time, they found that their community was more educated about school finance and more, I guess, ready to receive the information that they were required to receive when that was all happening. So I'll kick that one over to you, Kevin. I also sat through a really troubling presentation on preventing human trafficking, and some of this I'll share with you all during probably the January retreat, but just specifically that's really on the rise in especially wealthy school districts. And they gave a lot of reasons, and I can share that presentation, but it was incredibly disturbing, and it kind of painted a picture of the school districts that are being targeted because students have access to where they're finding, like students have more access to the online forums where they're being targeted. Sounded just like Bellbrook. It was really disturbing. And so after that, I was troubled, and so I went to a really cool presentation. I think Mr. Han went as well. I don't know if it's something that's super would work here, but a high school in Ohio that was teaching a phys ed elective about sports officiating, and it was combating a big problem they were having about they can't, and we have the same problem here. We can't find referees. The Lions Club can't find umpires and referees, and they were teaching sports officiating as an elective at their high school, and then fixing a local problem with their students that were being certified to do those kind of things. So I don't know if that's necessarily a great idea for high school. Maybe it is, or maybe it's a workshop or a summer course or I don't know. But it was much more enjoyable than the human trafficking presentation.
Okay.
But now I've got lots of stuff and a few other things that I think are probably better for our January session.
One of the most, I attended a ton of sessions too, but one of the most striking ones that I attended was a school up north near the Toledo area that actually was the victim of a random shooting during one of their football games. And honestly, it was about what they learned as a result of going through that situation. And it was very eye-opening. They were very candid with what they did right, what they did wrong. And there's a lot of good takeaways, things like that I never would even thought of, like making sure that all the staff members that come to a game have the same shirt on or the same jacket so that students know that they're safe and so that they can help in the reunification process. Making sure the opposing team has a radio that is linked with our athletic director so they can get safety, things like that. We may be already doing a lot of this, but it was just really powerful to hear them in that situation because it happened during one of their football games. So it wasn't a school setting, so they had to evacuate the stadium. So I was like, did we even have evacuation drills at the stadium? I have no idea. So it was just really eye-opening to see what they had learned, and they were very, very candid about things that they did wrong and what they would have changed going forward. So I thought it was a really good one to attend.
Is there a summary of that somewhere that we can digest it versus
Yep.
otherwise we'll forget what you said?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's available on the OSBA app. I can download all those for you.
That could be
It's
something
very
that
powerful.
the safety committee could
Yep.
reflect upon. Myself, I was limited. I had a work trip, but I conveniently was able to arrange flying out of Columbus, so I was able to spend pretty much the whole day there on Monday, with Monday only. Attended a couple sessions, at least one session or two. But what I probably most benefited from was there are a coliseum full of vendors that provide various products or services or whatnot. And I serve on the safety committee here, and as the board knows. And so there were a lot of things there that really caught my eye on how we can improve. It's never going to be a perfect situation to protect our children, perfectly, but we can do things to mitigate risk and threats. And so I had a number of conversations with various groups that were there, with what they were offering, and I have a bag full of it right here that just really benefited from and appreciate it. So next year, hopefully, I can deconflict from work trips and be there for the duration because it was pretty much a whirlwind, but I was able to target the areas I had specifically most interest in and have good, lengthy discussions with the folks that were there. So I really was glad I could attend these for just one day.
Anyone else? Just as a comment, school board members don't get compensated for days like that. We get compensated only for official meetings, so something like this. So when board members go to other events, that's all volunteer time for a school board member. And being the school board member is practically a volunteer position anyway. So, but just for the community's understanding of the time that people give to serve in this role is more than just the meeting. Just the comment.
And it's good to connect with other board members
Sure.
in other districts and see that, while it may seem to some in our community that like we're engaging in cultural wars, that's the universal standard. Like that's going on in every district, a lot of districts across. So we're all kind of commiserating together and, how do we handle this and what's the best way forward. So it was good to be with those other board members.
It's not the most fun vacation days that I take from my work, but it is helpful. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else for you, sir? All right. I'm going to make a motion that we move to executive session to discuss for the purpose of considering the employment and compensation of a public employee per RC 121.22 G1, and for the purpose of reviewing details relative to the security arrangements and emergency response protocols for a public body per RC 121.22 G6. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dorn. Say, we absolutely do not anticipate any action or any work to be done afterwards. However, of course, you are welcome to stay. There's a lot of cake over there, so please take cake home to your kids.
May not leave without cake. May not leave without cake.
Take cake. All right. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Dr. Pryor, if you're available and willing, we'd like to invite you. Okay. Please call roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn,
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
All right. We're in executive session at 8:36 p.m. And on.
YouTube's giving me issues. Sure. I would like to move that we adjourn.
I second.
So you call the roll?
You call it.
Oh, all right. Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mr. Kinsey,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorn.
Yes.
And I say yes as well. So the meeting is adjourned.